If you are gay and you have served in our nation's armed forces, I have good news. The people you work with like you. One of the eye-popping details in the Don't Ask, Don't Tell report released by the Pentagon today is that 69% of service members who answered the survey said they had served alongside someone they believed was gay. That's a lot, 69%. Asked how they felt about that maybe gay person they served alongside, the proportion of service members who said their feelings about that person were neither good nor bad or good or very good was 92%. So if you are gay and you've served in the military, or weirdly, if you're not gay but people in the military thought you were gay, the good news is that your colleagues in the military like you by a huge proportion, 92%, dude. Good job. The bad news is you're fired anyway, or liable to be, just because you're gay, no matter how good you are at your job or what any of your colleagues in the military think about you, because firing people for being gay is still the policy of the United States military. But maybe not for long. Today, the military released results of the largest review they've ever done on any personnel issue in the history of the United States military. They were asked to assess the impact of repealing the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy and to figure out the best way to repeal it if Congress decides it should be gotten rid of. They found that the risk of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell is low. They found that most members of the military don't give two hoots about the policy, and those that do think they have hoots to give about it are in the minority, and ultimately they'll be fine. I'm paraphrasing. The two co-chairs of the review, Jay Johnson, Pentagon General Counsel, and General Carter Ham of the Army, went so far as to write this in the introduction to the report, the executive summary. They wrote, quote, "We are both convinced that our military can do this. Even during this time of war, we do not underestimate the challenges in implementing a change in the law, but neither should we underestimate the ability of our extraordinarily dedicated servicemen and women to adapt to such change and continue to provide our nation with the military capability to accomplish any mission." If anyone cares what the military thinks about this policy, if anyone cares what the military thinks about the prospect of repealing this policy, it's done now. This report ends it. It is utterly unequivocal. The policy can be repealed. I mean, our military can do this. They've now reported what they need to do to implement repeal in a way that makes sense for the military. They've issued their recommendations on what needs to change in the military to accommodate gay people serving openly. Mostly what they say needs to change is nothing. Everybody abides by the same rules. Everybody abides by the same standards of conduct. Harassment and discrimination are not okay, just like they're not okay now. The only difference is you can't get fired just for being gay. It is an unequivocal report on the issue. The military, in short, says not a problem. Senator Lindsey Graham, I do not support the idea of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell before our military members and commanders complete their review. I'm open-minded to what the military may suggest. Senator Scott Brown, I believe we have a responsibility to the men and women of our armed forces to be thorough in our consideration of this issue and take their opinions seriously. I'm keeping an open mind, but I do not support moving ahead until the Pentagon completes its study. Senator John Ensign. Senator Ensign is waiting on the report from the Pentagon. Senator Olympia Snowe. The question is whether we should be voting on this issue before we have the benefit of the comprehensive review that the Secretary of Defense ordered. Senator Mark Kirk, I think we should wait for the Joint Chiefs of Staff to report. Senator George Voinovich, I believe it would be logical to wait for the Department of Defense to issue its report on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. All of these senators, the people with the power to decide this issue now, say they have been waiting to decide until this report came out. It is out now. And anyone waiting on this report to see if the military is giving the green light to repeal this policy, now has their green light. Seriously, it's green. Green means go. If word from the military is what you say you have been waiting for, this is as clear as that gets. If you have been waiting for the green light, it's green now. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell already passed in the House this year, which means it is up to the Senate and the Senate alone to finally do away with this 17-year law if it's going to be done away with. Joining us now to discuss this green means go moment on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell is Senator Mark Udall from the great state of Colorado. He serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for acknowledging that Colorado is a great state. And by the way, there is a green light. We're going to see that green light displayed even more on Thursday and Friday when the Armed Services Committees hold hearings and hear from the Secretary of Defense and hear from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and hear from the service chiefs themselves. So this is an important moment, as you know.
Senator, what are you expecting from those hearings in terms of focal points of those hearings, both for people who are proponents of repealing the policy and proponents of keeping it?
Well, I expect to hear from some who are implacably opposed, reasons to continue to be opposed, and you outlined a couple of them in your lead into the story. But I'm hopeful that some who, as you also listed as being open to what the study would show and demonstrate, will come to the hearings with an open mind and decide then to support moving forward in the last few weeks of this Congress. If we don't get this done now, and you know this, I fear that it'll be a number of years until we actually have a statutory repeal. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense are saying they want to do this now because they want clarity. They also know this is about national security. That's long been my point of view, that we want to lift this outdated policy because we're in 2 wars. We've discharged over 14,000 patriotic Americans. And in the end, this is about civil rights, but it's also about our national security. Those are 2 very, very important elements in why this policy needs to be repealed.
Senator, are there any people, any members of the Senate who have previously voted no on this matter, voted not to repeal, either for some procedural reason or because they were opposed to repealing the policy, who you know may be changing their votes? People who we should look to as possible flips on this?
Well, I think we ought to look to Senators Brown of Massachusetts and Senator Collins of Maine, who both in the committee supported the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We should also look to Senator Webb, who really wanted to see the study. And I can tell you that Senator Graham is always open-minded, and I take seriously and on its face value what he said about wanting to see the studies and the results therein. Senator Graham, of course, is a reservist. He does a couple of weeks of duty every year. And as I've said, he's been very open in the past to looking at matters like this from all sides and doing what's right. So those are some senators, but there are a number of other ones that you mentioned in your lead-in as well. Are
you aware of lobbying efforts among Democrats to try to wrap up every Democratic vote, not just Jim Webb, but also Blanche Lincoln and Mark Pryor? Are you aware if the White House is, for example, lobbying any senators?
There are certainly a lot of quiet conversations. There aren't any baldly public lobbying efforts going on, because I think this is the sort of thing that's better done from senator to senator. But history beckons all of us. This is also the right thing to do, and I think Secretary Gates' appeal today to do it hopefully will be heard by not just Democrats, by Republicans as well, who, of course, style themselves for good reason as the defenders of the country and strong on national defense. And that's really what this is about. You know what really moved me in the hearings, and I know you've attended some of them, was when you asked all of those service members, NCOs, enlisted personnel officers who'd been discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, what they would do if it was repealed. They all said they would re-enlist, or they would ask for their commission to be reinstated. Is there anything more patriotic, or is there anything that underlines more the opportunity here to repeal an outdated law that doesn't serve us well?
One last question for you on this briefly, Senator.
Yeah.
Secretary Gates and Admiral Mullen both emphasized over and over today the importance of Congress handling this so the courts don't do it. Do you see
Yes.
that as critically important as those 2 military leaders said it is?
It's crucial. I think you're a lawyer. I'm not, but we both know, having worked with the law for a long time, that judges and the law sometimes takes a twisted and windy road to getting to the point where you need to arrive. And clearly we want to arrive at this point very quickly. And that's again why the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs are saying repeal the law clearly, so we then can go to our enlisted and personnel, our officers, the leaders in the military, begin to implement this change that 2 years ago the President called for. And clearly in the hearings we've had, the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs said it's not a matter of whether, it's a matter of how we're going to do this. They want to get to work. They want to enhance our national security. They want to let patriotic Americans, whether gay or straight, serve in our military.
Senator Mark Udall, Democrat of Colorado, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rachel.
I should note for the record that I am not a lawyer, but I am very happy to be confused with one.